Welcome back. Tonight, we drift through the sleepy streets of ancient Crete. So wherever you are, however your day has been, you have nothing to do now but rest. There are no twists tonight, nothing to follow, nothing you need to remember in the morning. A city of red columns and sun-warmed stone, growing still beneath the fading coastal light. We'll drift slowly, in no hurry to be anywhere at all. If these journeys help you rest, you're welcome to follow along, but only if you'd like to. And if you're listening now, leave the name of your city and the time where you are. Wherever you're listening from, you're in good company tonight. So let yourself settle. Let your shoulders soften and let your eyes close whenever they're ready. Breathe in slowly. And let it go. There's no need to stay awake for any of this. Just let the streets of ancient Crete come to you. The island of Crete sits quietly in the deep blue sea. It became Europe's first great power through a simple accident of geography. The island rests right at the crossroads of the Aegean and the wider eastern waters. Long ago, it served as a vital stepping stone for early ships. These wooden vessels needed safe harbors during long trips. The island offered them shelter from sudden storms. Slowly, this steady flow of passing ships changed the local way of life. A quiet society of farmers became a busy sea hub. You can imagine the early docks filling with strange new goods. The sea brought wealth, ideas, and people to these rocky beaches. The island learned to look outward toward the horizon. The water was no longer a wall. It became a wide, open road. It connected this rugged land to the rest of the ancient world. The rocky soil here was never meant for growing vast fields of grain. But the arrival of the olive tree changed everything. This single plant turned a quiet farming culture into a true powerhouse of trade. The dry earth and bright sun were perfect for olive groves. Farmers planted them across the terraced hillsides. The trees grew slowly. They twisted their silver and green leaves toward the light. They produced a rich oil that the rest of the ancient world wanted. This liquid gold became a massive export. Ships carried heavy clay jars of it across the sea. People used the oil for cooking, lighting lamps, and bathing. It brought incredible wealth back to the local rulers. You can still see ancient, gnarled trees clinging to these same hills today. Their deep roots hold the dry earth in place. They are living reminders of the simple crop that built an empire. Beyond the olive groves, massive wealth came from a tiny, delicate flower. The island enjoyed the perfect climate for the saffron crocus. These small, purple blooms blanketed the rocky hillsides each autumn. The local people learned to carefully harvest the bright red threads from inside the flowers. It was slow, quiet work. It required gentle hands. This rare spice became the most expensive dye in the ancient world. The rulers here managed to control the entire saffron trade. They shipped it to distant kings and wealthy merchants across the sea. The bright yellow dye colored the finest linen garments. The spice flavored the richest meals in foreign courts. It is amazing to think about the scale of this trade. A sprawling sea empire was largely funded by the careful plucking of tiny petals. The wealth of massive stone palaces grew from the quiet blooming of fragile autumn flowers. The island also became famous for its beautiful bronze tools and weapons. But this power relied on a very fragile supply chain. The rocky landscape held absolutely no native copper or tin. You need both of these metals to make bronze. The entire culture depended on keeping long trade routes open. Merchant ships had to sail constantly to places like Cyprus to find raw copper. Tin had to travel along complex networks all the way from Afghanistan. If those distant routes closed, the local forges would go cold. You can picture the dusty courtyards where metal workers labored. They melted imported metal in hot clay pots. They poured the glowing liquid into carefully carved stone molds. The heat of the fires mixed with the salty sea breeze. Every bronze sword or bowl was a triumph of long-distance trade. The island's power was tied to places they could barely see on a map. The wealth from all this trade allowed rulers to build grand centers of power. The rich Masara plain in the south dictated where the palace of Phaistos would sit. Builders placed it on a low, flat ridge. This spot offered a perfect view over the vast valley below. The rulers could step out onto their stone terraces and look down. They could survey the endless fields of golden wheat and silver olive trees. This rich farmland funded their growing empire. The palace was not just a home. It was a massive storage center for the valley's harvest. Deep rooms held giant clay jars filled with grain and oil. The location was chosen for control, but it also offered deep beauty. In the late afternoon, the sun casts long shadows across the plain. The light turns the distant mountains a soft purple. The view from the ridge remains breathtaking today. Around the year 1700 BC, a massive earthquake shook the entire region. The violent tremors leveled the original stone palaces. Walls cracked, and heavy roofs collapsed into the courtyards. But the people did not abandon their ruined homes. Instead, they used the terrible disaster as a blank canvas. They carefully cleared the broken rubble away. They prepared the ground to build something much grander. This was the start of a new era. the builders designed much more complex structures. They raised multi-story buildings with wide staircases and open light wells. These are the sprawling ruins that visitors walk through today. The disaster forced them to rethink how they lived. They turned a moment of ruin into an era of brilliant design. You can almost hear the sound of stonecutters working late into the evening. They shaped fresh limestone blocks by the light of oil lamps. They built a new world on top of the old. The new architecture was a direct response to the restless earth. The builders knew the ground would eventually shake again. They needed a way to keep the massive stone walls from shattering. Their solution was a brilliant piece of ancient engineering. They wove thick cypress wood beams directly into the stone walls. These horizontal and vertical timbers created a flexible wooden skeleton. When the next earthquake rolled through, the buildings could actually sway. The wood absorbed the shock while the heavy blocks stayed in place. It was a perfect balance of rigid stone and yielding timber. You can still see the square gaps in the surviving walls today. The wood rotted away long ago. It left empty channels behind. But those empty spaces tell a story of careful observation. The builders learned to work with the violent forces of nature. They designed their grand homes to dance with the shaking earth. This obsession with grand architecture permanently altered the local landscape. The builders needed massive amounts of wood for their new designs. They required thick, straight logs for the flexible wall skeletons. They also needed giant trunks to serve as the iconic red columns. To meet this demand, workers clear-cut entire forests of native cypress trees. The rugged mountains in the center of the island were slowly stripped bare. Teams of oxen dragged the heavy logs down dusty dirt paths. The sound of bronze axes echoed through the valleys for decades. This ancient loss of trees changed the way water flowed down the hills. It altered the soil and the shade. The grand palaces were beautiful, but they came at a heavy cost to the earth. The lush, green mountains slowly turned into the stark, rocky peaks we see today. The island traded its deep forests for the glory of its sprawling stone courtyards. The largest of these new complexes was Knossos, located in the north. Its layout was not random. The exact direction of the building was determined by the landscape itself. To the south sits Mount Juktas. The jagged profile of this mountain perfectly resembles a sleeping human face, resting against the sky. The ancient builders considered this peak deeply sacred. They aligned the entire palace so that its wide central court framed the mountain. When you stood in the middle of the paving stones, you looked directly at the sleeping giant. The architecture drew the eye outward to the natural world. The building and the mountain were locked in a quiet conversation. The rulers held their ceremonies in the shadow of that rocky profile. Even today, the mountain watches over the crumbling walls. The light hits the peak, just as it did thousands of years ago. The connection between stone and sky remains unbroken. If you look closely at Knossos, you will notice something missing. Unlike the heavily fortified cities on the mainland, this palace had no defensive walls. There were no massive gates or watchtowers to keep enemies out. The buildings sat openly in a lush, green valley. The leaders here gambled their entire security on their naval power. They believed their fleet of wooden ships was strong enough to protect them. The sea itself was the only wall they felt they needed. It was a breathtaking display of confidence. They lived without the constant fear of invasion that shaped other ancient cultures. Their homes were designed for light, air, and comfort, not for war. You can wander through the open courtyards and feel that deep sense of peace. The architecture speaks of a people who felt entirely safe in their world. They trusted the deep blue water to keep the danger far away. The layout of the palace was incredibly complex. It featured hundreds of rooms, twisting corridors, and deep basement storage rooms. There were dead ends, sudden staircases, and confusing light wells. Centuries later, classical Greeks wandered through these overgrown ruins. The sprawling, open design made absolutely no sense to them. They were used to simple, walled cities. The strange architecture actually inspired the famous myth of the labyrinth. They imagined this place was a magical prison, designed to be impossible to escape. They told stories of a monster hiding in the dark center. It is fascinating how a design meant for peaceful living became a symbol of fear. The original builders just wanted fresh air and separate spaces for their work. But time and ruin changed the meaning of the stones. The quiet, empty hallways became a puzzle in the minds of later travelers. The true history was lost, replaced by a dark and lasting legend. To support these massive palaces, the island needed highly organized harbors. The ancient coastal site of Komos served as the primary southern port. It rested along the quiet, sandy shores of the Libyan Sea. This was a busy, vital gateway for merchants returning from Egypt and the Levant. The builders constructed massive stone ship sheds right on the beach. They also built large storage galleries to hold imported goods. After a long, dangerous voyage, sailors could safely house their wooden vessels here. They pulled the ships out of the water to protect them from winter storms. The port was a place of rest and repair. You can picture the heavy ropes and smell the hot pitch used to seal the hulls. Today, the ruins sit peacefully near the crashing waves. The grand sheds are gone. but the foundation stones remain. They mark the spot where the ancient world stepped onto these shores. On the remote eastern edge of the island sits the Palace of Zakros. It was built in this isolated spot for one very specific economic reason. The sheltered bay here was the last safe harbor before the open sea crossing to Egypt. This location made Zakros the wealthy gatekeeper of the rich African trade. Merchant ships loaded with copper and exotic goods anchored in the calm water. They waited here for the right winds before starting the long journey south. The local rulers taxed and managed this vital flow of wealth. The palace was smaller than Knossos, but it was incredibly rich. It was a quiet, busy outpost at the very edge of the known world. The sun rises early over this eastern bay, lighting up the calm water. You can sit on the ancient stones and look out toward the horizon. The sea still feels like a wide, open door. This golden age of sea power ended with a sudden, violent shock. Around 1600 BC, a massive volcano erupted on the nearby island of Thera. The huge explosion sent a towering tsunami crashing into the northern coast. This single devastating wave wiped out the entire coastal network. It smashed the wooden fleet into splinters and flooded the busy ports. A thick layer of grey volcanic ash fell from the darkened sky. It blanketed the beaches and choked the fields. The sea that had always protected them suddenly turned into a weapon. The loss of the ships was a fatal blow to their trade network. Without their navy, the island was suddenly weak. This disaster began a slow, painful shift in power. The culture did not end overnight, but its absolute dominance was broken. The shattered ribs of ancient ships washed ashore in the twilight. The world they knew was washed away. Following the volcanic fallout, the political landscape violently shifted. Power on the island quickly centralized. Other regional palaces struggled to recover from the ash and the ruined ports. Their fields were poisoned, and their trade routes were broken. But Knossos managed to survive and adapt. It absorbed the lands of its weakened neighbors. The grand complex transformed from a regional capital into the undisputed ruler of the entire island. The leaders gathered their wealth and tightened their grip on the remaining resources. You can feel this shift in the dimly lit throne room. A high-backed alabaster seat sits against the wall, flanked by painted griffins. It is a room designed to project absolute authority. The flickering oil lamps cast long shadows across the stone floor. The gentle, shared power of the past was gone. The island was now ruled by a single, heavy hand. It was trying to hold a broken world together. Around 1450 BC, another wave of destruction swept across the island. This time the cause was not a natural disaster. Every major palace except Knossos was suddenly destroyed. The thick ash layers found in the ruins suggest a coordinated fiery invasion. It was not an earthquake, but a deliberate attack. This marks the exact moment when mainland Greeks finally seized control. The open cities were completely defenseless against armed warriors. The palace of Malaya burned fiercely in the night. Its wooden columns collapsed, and its beautiful pottery shattered on the flagstones. By dawn, the grand courtyards were nothing but smoldering, blackened stone. The native rulers were swept away, replaced by foreign conquerors. The peaceful era of the Sea Kings was officially over. The ruins sat quietly in the morning light, still smoking. The island belonged to a new people now. Its culture would never be exactly the same again. The arrival of these Mycenaean Greeks fundamentally changed how the island was run. The conquerors brought their own language and a completely new way of doing things. They introduced a new writing system known as Linear B. The native scribes were forced to adapt their complex accounting methods to this foreign tongue. You can picture a scribe sitting quietly on a wooden stool. He presses a sharp bronze stylus into a damp, rectangular clay tablet. He is recording taxes, sheep and grain for a king who speaks a different language. The archive rooms filled up with these small clay records. The administration became rigid and highly organized. The old flowing script of the past was abandoned. The new rulers wanted everything counted and controlled. The scribes worked in the quiet, dusty rooms. They translated the wealth of the island into strange new symbols. The culture was slowly being rewritten from the inside out. The final fall of Knossos happened around 1375 BC. It was triggered by a massive, devastating fire that swept through the remaining structures. The flames consumed the wooden beams and brought the heavy roofs crashing down. But this disaster also created a strange historical miracle. The intense heat baked the soft clay tablets hard as stone. This accidental firing preserved the very records of the palace's final days. If the fire had not happened, the damp clay would have crumbled into dust. Instead, the tablets lay scattered and safe beneath the ash for thousands of years. They waited in the dark, holding the last written words of a dying administration. Today, we can read the exact lists of goods stored in the final hours. The fire that destroyed the building is the only reason we know its secrets. The end of the story was locked safely inside the flames. The wider Bronze Age collapse eventually forced the survivors to make a desperate choice. They completely abandoned their vulnerable coastal cities. The sea was no longer safe. It was filled with raiders and broken trade routes. The people migrated high into the jagged, unforgiving mountains. They built remote refuge settlements like Carfi, hidden away in the clouds. They traded the vast wealth of the sea for the cold safety of the peaks. You can see the clusters of rough, unhewn stone houses clinging to the steep slopes. The wind howls through the narrow alleys. It is a stark contrast to the warm, open courtyards of the old palaces. The people here lived a hard, quiet life, looking down over the empty valleys. They watched the distant water, knowing they could never go back. The Grand Sea Empire ended here, shivering on a misty mountain ridge. They held on to the memories of the past. The world was changing. The shift from bronze to iron doomed the island's international standing. At the end of the Bronze Age, new technologies spread across the sea. Weapons and tools could now be made from locally available iron ore. The complex trade networks that made this place rich simply evaporated. Nobody needed to sail here for bronze anymore. The grand ports grew quiet, and the merchant ships stopped coming. The people settled into small, simple villages of stone huts with thatched roofs. You might see a solitary blacksmith working a piece of dark iron on a stone anvil. The ringing of his hammer replaced the busy noise of the palace courtyards. The island became just another quiet province in a larger world. The wealth faded, but the daily rhythms of farming and fishing continued. The people adapted to the quiet. They left the glory of the past behind them. Even as the world moved on, the original culture refused to completely disappear. The ancient native language stubbornly survived the Greek takeover. It retreated to isolated eastern towns, like Praesos, hidden away in the hills. In these quiet communities, the old words were still spoken in the streets. Amazingly, the language was still being written down 1,000 years after the palaces fell. The locals eventually used Greek letters to spell out their ancient, entirely different tongue. You can find heavy stone blocks set into rough village walls. The carved letters look familiar, but the words remain a mystery. It is a beautiful example of cultural resilience. The grand kings were gone, but the voices of the common people echoed through the centuries. They held on to their identity in the quiet corners of the mountains. The past lived on in the simple conversations of everyday life. While the people adapted, the landscape itself continued to slowly change. The ancient harbor of Amnisos was once the bustling port for Knossos. But it was eventually rendered completely useless by a slow, invisible force. Over many centuries, river dirt quietly filled the shallow bay. The silt pushed the coastline further and further outward. This natural process left the ancient stone docks stranded far inland. Today, it is a quiet, marshy landscape, surrounded by tall reeds and dry earth. The sea is only visible far in the distance. You can walk among the weathered mooring rings. You can imagine the water that used to lap against the stones. There was no sudden disaster here, just the patient work of the river. The earth simply reclaimed the harbor, grain by grain. It is a peaceful, melancholy place. The busy shouts of sailors have been replaced by the rustling of the wind. On the eastern coast, the ancient city of Aulis met a very different fate. It did not silt up, and it was not destroyed by a sudden wave. Instead, it sank beneath the sea due to the slow sinking of the coastline. The ground simply lowered, inch by inch, over hundreds of years. Today, the city rests quietly in the shallow, clear waters of Alunda Bay. If you take a small boat out on a calm morning, you can look down through the turquoise water. The straight lines of ancient stone walls and street foundations are clearly visible just beneath the surface. Fish swim through the doorways of sunken homes. The sea claimed the city so gently that the stones barely moved. It is a perfectly preserved ghost town, bathed in underwater light. The water ripples over the old streets. It keeps the ruins safe and silent in their watery grave. The forces beneath the island have literally tilted the entire landmass over millennia. While the east sank, the western half of the island was thrust violently upward. The ground rose by nearly 30 feet in some places. This massive shift left ancient harbor facilities hanging high and dry. If you walk along the western cliffs today, you can see the strange results. Water-worn harbor steps and heavy stone mooring rings are carved directly into the rock face. But they are suspended 30 feet above the current crashing waves. It looks like a mistake, a harbor built for flying ships. The earth simply lifted the old docks into the sky. It is a stark reminder of the immense power sleeping beneath the soil. The island is still moving, still changing its shape. The ancient stones are just passengers on a very slow, restless journey. The way we view this ancient world today was largely dictated by one man. In the year 1900, a British archaeologist named Arthur Evans purchased the site of Knossos. He began a massive dig that uncovered the sprawling ruins. But Evans made a very controversial decision. He chose to rebuild parts of the palace using modern concrete. He painted the new columns bright red and recreated the faded frescoes. His work created a vivid, highly interpreted version of history. When you visit today, you are seeing his specific vision of the past. The concrete stands right alongside the authentic ancient limestone. It is a strange mix of real history and Edwardian imagination. The site feels like a theatrical stage set, waiting for the actors to return. Evans wanted to bring the ruins back to life, and in a way, he succeeded. He gave the modern world a beautiful, flawed dream of the past. To reach the great palace of Knossos, you walk an ancient path. This is the Royal Road. It is often called the oldest paved street in Europe. Heavy limestone slabs form a smooth, raised surface. Stone drains run quietly along both sides. The builders wanted to impress you long before you reached the gates. They laid these stones over 3,000 years ago. The road cuts a clean line through the green landscape. It guides your feet toward the distant red columns. You can feel the wealth of the Minoan world in the solid ground beneath you. The stones are worn smooth by countless footsteps. Dignitaries and merchants once walked this exact route. They brought gifts and trade goods from across the sea. The road feels deliberate and proud. It tells you that you are arriving somewhere important. The journey slows down here. The heavy stones demand a steady, measured pace. Just outside the main grounds sits a quiet resting place. This small stone pavilion is known as the caravanserai. It served as an ancient motel for weary travelers. The journey up from the harbor was long and dusty. Before entering the sacred spaces, visitors stopped here to wash. A natural spring feeds a shallow, clear pool of water. Low stone benches line the edges of the room. You can imagine sitting in the cool shade. The sound of trickling water fills the quiet air. Travelers would dip their tired feet into the fresh spring. It was a moment of pause before facing the grand courts. The pavilion is simple, but deeply welcoming. It shows a culture that valued hospitality and cleanliness. The dust of the road washed away into the earth. Only then were you ready to walk through the palace doors. The water still flows softly today. The approach from the south required a massive feat of engineering. A steep, rocky ravine cuts across the land here. To cross it, builders constructed a grand stepped viaduct. This heavy stone bridge carried the paved road safely over the gap. The design features narrow, triangular openings called corbelled arches. These arches are stacked carefully from rough-hewn stones. They allowed the seasonal river to rush underneath during winter storms. The water could flow freely without washing out the road above. The bridge steps up the hillside in broad, confident tiers. It is a quiet triumph of ancient problem-solving. The stones blend perfectly into the rugged landscape. They look almost like a natural rock formation. You can stand on the edge and look down into the dry riverbed. The bridge still holds its ground against the deep valley. It bridges the wild earth and the ordered city. Further south at the Palace of Phaistos, the entrance is even more dramatic. A monumental staircase climbs directly up the steep hillside. The steps are incredibly wide, stretching 45 feet across. They lead up to a grand, columned entrance hall. This staircase was not just built for simple access. It was designed to make you feel small. As you stand at the bottom, the sheer scale of the stone is overwhelming. The wide steps force you to look up at the sky. The climb is slow and deliberate. The afternoon sun casts long, deep shadows across the pale rock. Every step feels like a transition into a higher world. The builders understood the emotional power of architecture. They used the natural slope of the hill to their advantage. The grand stairs elevate the building above the surrounding plains. It is a quiet, heavy climb into the past. The most important walls of these buildings present a flawless face. Builders used a technique known as ashlar masonry. They cut massive blocks of limestone into perfect rectangles. The stones were shaped so precisely that they fit together without any mortar. They stack in tight, seamless rows. These sheer walls face the public courtyards. They catch the warm afternoon light beautifully. The smooth stone feels cool and solid under your hand. There are no rough edges or uneven gaps. The precision is startling for a world without steel tools. It took immense patience to carve and place each block. The walls look as though they grew out of the earth, perfectly formed. They give the courtyards a feeling of deep calm and order. The tight joints have held strong against thousands of years of weather. The stone glows with a soft, pale warmth as evening approaches. High above the smooth walls, the roof lines carried a distinct shape. Massive stone carvings sat on the flat edges of the buildings. They are stylized bull horns, known as horns of consecration. Each pair was carved from a single, heavy block of pale limestone. They marked the structures below as sacred spaces. You could see these bright white shapes from miles away. They stood out sharply against the clear blue sky. The bull was a deeply revered symbol in this culture. Placing its horns on the roof brought that power to the architecture. The carvings are simple, smooth and abstract. They do not look like real horns, but rather a pure idea of them. They sit quietly on the high ledges, watching over the courtyards. The stone is heavy, yet the sweeping curves feel light. They frame the distant mountains perfectly between their pale upward points. The wooden columns supporting these heavy roofs defy normal logic. They are noticeably wider at the top than at the bottom. This inverted shape is a signature of their design. Builders carved them from massive cypress trunks placed upside down. Turning the wood this way prevented the dead trees from sprouting new leaves. It also provided a much wider base at the top. This broad surface helped support the massive wooden ceiling beams. The columns taper down to rest on round stone bases. They are painted a deep, rich red. The smooth wood contrasts beautifully with the pale stone walls. The downward taper gives the rooms a strange, floating quality. It feels as though the ceiling is pressing down, yet the columns hold firm. The design is both practical and visually striking. It is a quiet rebellion against gravity. The dark red pillars stand like silent guards in the shade. Moving deeper inside, the architecture sinks into the earth. The grand staircase plunges 4 stories down into the hillside. It is a massive, shadowy descent into the lower levels. When early archaeologists found it, the original wooden columns had rotted away. The heavy stone steps were left suspended precariously in the packed dirt. It took a dangerous, painstaking rescue operation to save them. Workers had to prop up the floating stones with temporary wooden scaffolds. Today, the staircase feels solid and secure once again. The air grows cooler with every step you take downward. The light fades into a soft, dusty gloom. It is a quiet, enclosed space that feels hidden from the world. The sheer weight of the stone above you is humbling. You can feel the deep silence of the buried earth. The stairs wrap tightly around a central core, leading you further down. To bring fresh air into these deep, multi-story rooms, builders invented something brilliant. They created vertical shafts known as light wells. These square openings cut straight through the building from the roof to the ground. They are completely open to the sky above. Sunlight filters down through the wooden balconies. It casts sharp, moving shadows on the lower floors. The light well acts like a lung for the deep interior. It draws cool breezes down into the darkest rooms. You can stand on the ground floor and look straight up. A small patch of bright blue sky sits at the very top. The design brings the outside world into the buried spaces. It keeps the deep rooms from feeling like caves. The light shifts and changes as the sun moves across the sky. It is a simple, elegant way to breathe life into heavy stone. The windows in these deep rooms do not use clear glass. Instead, the builders used thinly sliced slabs of alabaster. This translucent stone is a beautiful, milky white. It allows a soft, glowing light to enter the dark spaces. The thin stone keeps out the fierce heat of the Mediterranean sun. It also blocks the harsh, blinding glare of midday. The light that makes it through is warm and diffused. It reveals the delicate, natural veins running through the rock. The room fills with a calm, even brightness. It feels like being inside a glowing lantern. The alabaster panels offer privacy while still connecting to the daylight. You can trace the faint patterns in the stone with your eyes. The glow changes slightly as clouds pass overhead outside. It is a restful, quiet kind of light. The heavy stone walls feel softer in this gentle illumination. The walls inside the finest rooms were not always solid. Architects designed flexible spaces using pier and door partitions. These are rows of tall, dark wooden double doors. They are separated by narrow wooden pillars. By opening or closing specific doors, residents could change the room instantly. You could fold them all back to reveal a sunlit courtyard. This would let the cool evening breeze sweep through the space. Or, you could close them tight to create a small, private room. The design gave them total control over light and air. The heavy wooden doors pivot smoothly on their bases. The dark wood looks striking against the white floors. It is a clever way to adapt to the changing seasons. The rooms breathe and shift depending on what is needed. The space is never entirely fixed. It responds quietly to the people living inside it. The solid walls that remain are covered in vibrant color. These bright frescoes survived because of a specific painting technique. The artists used a method called buon fresco. They applied mineral pigments directly onto smooth, wet lime plaster. As the damp wall dried, a chemical reaction occurred. It locked the bright blues and reds deep inside the surface. The color became part of the wall itself, rather than just sitting on top. This is why the paint has not flaked away over the centuries. You can still see the artist's quick, confident brushstrokes. They had to work fast before the plaster dried completely. The colors bleed slightly into the rough stone edges. The scenes show dolphins, lilies and quiet processions. The pigments still hold the energy of the hands that mixed them. The damp earth preserved these bright flashes of ancient life perfectly. The floors beneath these painted walls were once brilliant white. The builders loved to use gypsum for paving and wall veneers. It is a soft, sparkling stone that catches the light beautifully. When freshly cut, it gives the rooms a clean, luminous glow. Unfortunately, gypsum has a hidden flaw. It is highly water-soluble. Thousands of years of winter rain have slowly melted the ruined floors. The once smooth slabs are now heavily weathered and pitted. They look slightly dissolved, like sugar left out in the damp. The edges are soft and rounded by centuries of slow erosion. In the twilight, the pale stone still glows softly. You can see the faint sparkle of the minerals in the dim light. The rain has reshaped the architecture in its own quiet way. The floors are a slow melting record of the weather. The stone is returning gently to the earth. Some rooms feature small sunken spaces, lined with this same white gypsum. These are known as lustral basins. They are accessed by a short, L-shaped stone staircase. For a long time, people thought they were ancient baths. However, these deep, square rooms completely lack drains. Because they are lined with water-soluble gypsum, filling them would have ruined the stone. They were actually used for dry ritual purification. You would walk down the narrow steps into the cool, quiet basin. The smooth white panels surround you on all sides. It is a small, private space, meant for quiet reflection. The air feels still and heavy at the bottom of the stairs. There is no sound of splashing water here. It is a place to cleanse the mind rather than the body. The dry stone waits patiently in the soft light. The ritual remains a quiet mystery. Real water rituals happened in a much more hidden place. Tucked away across a steep ravine lies the spring chamber. It is a small, subterranean room, built around a natural water source. The space is dark, quiet, and deeply peaceful. Soft, natural light filters in from the narrow entrance. It reflects gently off the small pool of clear spring water. Ancient moss-covered masonry surrounds the sacred spring. This quiet sanctuary remained revered for a very long time. Even after the great buildings nearby were abandoned, people still came here. Locals continued to leave small clay bowls as offerings in the dark. The water was too important to forget. The chamber feels completely removed from the grand courtyards above. It is an intimate, earthy space. The sound of the spring echoes softly off the low stone ceiling. The water bubbles up, just as it always has. Water was managed with incredible skill beneath the main floors. A hidden plumbing system runs quietly through the dry earth. This network would not be matched again until the Roman Empire. The engineers used interlocking terracotta pipes to move clean water. Each clay pipe is slightly tapered at one end. This clever shape increased the water pressure as it flowed. It also prevented dirt and sediment from building up inside. The pipes fit together perfectly, resting in deep, narrow trenches. They delivered fresh water throughout the sprawling complex. The clay is perfectly preserved, baked hard by ancient fires. You can see the careful ridges shaped by the potter's hands. The system is entirely hidden from the grand public spaces above. It is the quiet, working heart of the architecture. The water flowed silently beneath the feet of kings and merchants. The dry pipes still wait in the dust. This advanced plumbing allowed for some surprising hidden luxuries. In a quiet room called the Queen's Megaron, There is a functioning flush toilet. A wooden seat once sat over a deep stone drain. The small room is lit softly by a nearby light well. To flush it, you simply poured pitchers of water down a carved channel. This channel connected directly to the main sewer line outside. The waste was carried away quickly and cleanly. The plastered walls keep the small space cool and private. It is a deeply human detail, in a place of grand monuments. The stone bench still features its neat, circular opening. The drainage channel drops away into the dark earth below. It shows a deep understanding of comfort and sanitation. The room is simple, practical and perfectly designed. The quiet rush of poured water once echoed off these smooth walls. Outside, the engineers had to manage the fierce winter rains. They designed outdoor drainage channels with sweeping parabolic curves. Instead of sharp, right-angle corners, the carved stone curves gently. This specific shape is a brilliant piece of fluid dynamics. The smooth curve slowed the velocity of the rushing rainwater. It prevented the water from splashing over the sides during heavy storms. The channels run neatly alongside the paved walkways. They guide the runoff safely away from the delicate foundations. The stone is worn smooth by centuries of flowing water. You can trace the elegant curve with your hand. It looks almost like a natural riverbed carved into the rock. The builders paid attention to how water actually moves. They did not try to force it into rigid boxes. They gave it a graceful path to follow. The dry channels still sweep beautifully around the corners. The wealth of this society was carefully protected from the weather. The West magazines are a series of long, dark, narrow rooms. They were designed solely for hoarding massive amounts of goods. The dim stone corridors are lined with giant clay jars. These intricate vessels are called pitoi. Some of them stand over 6 feet tall, towering above you. They were filled to the brim with olive oil, wine and grain. The rooms are cool and heavily shadowed. The thick walls kept the temperature stable for the precious stores. You can see the elaborate rope patterns decorating the sides of the jars. The sheer number of them is staggering. Walking down the narrow aisle feels like moving through a giant vault. The air smells faintly of dry earth and old clay. This was the true power of the rulers. Their wealth was measured in deep, heavy jars. More storage was built directly into the wide, flat courtyards. In the paved west courts, builders constructed massive circular pits. These deep, stone-lined holes are known as couloirs. They cast deep, curved shadows in the late afternoon sun. While their exact purpose is still debated, they were likely giant silos. They stored the surplus grain collected from the surrounding farmers. The rough-hewn stones line the walls in neat, tight circles. Looking down into them, you feel the vast scale of the harvest. They are built flush with the paving stones of the courtyard. The open pits break up the flat expanse of the gathering space. They represent a massive communal effort to survive the winter. The grain would have been poured directly into the dark earth. The empty circles now hold only quiet shadows. They are deep pockets of history carved into the stone floor. At the nearby site of Malia, the storage takes a different shape. Builders constructed massive circular stone silos above the ground. These deep structures feature a heavy central pillar in the middle of each circle. They sit surrounded by a flat, quiet paved courtyard. These were designed to hold enormous quantities of grain. They acted as a centralized bank for the entire region. Agricultural wealth was stored here and redistributed by the rulers. The central pillars likely supported a heavy roof to keep the grain dry. The circular walls are thick and deeply rooted in the earth. You can walk around the edges and look into the empty basins. They show how organized and careful this society had to be. Food was power, and it was guarded closely. The stone circles feel solid and permanent. They wait patiently in the sun, long after the grain is gone. The distribution of this wealth likely involved public ceremonies. The theatrical area at Phaistos was built for exactly this kind of gathering. It consists of broad, shallow stone steps overlooking a paved rectangular court. This space predates Greek amphitheaters by many centuries. It is the earliest known architectural space, designed specifically for a standing crowd. The steps form a long, straight flight along one side of the courtyard. They are empty and quiet in the early morning light. You can imagine the courtyard filled with people watching a performance or ritual. The shallow steps are perfect for standing and looking out. The design is simple, open, and highly functional. It brings the community together in one focused space. The stone is worn smooth by thousands of ancient spectators. The courtyard feels expectant, as if waiting for the crowd to return. The silence here is deep and resonant. Away from the grand courts, the architecture changes completely. The town of Gornia reveals how the working class actually lived. Unlike the sprawling monuments, it is a dense honeycomb of small homes. The single-story stone houses are tightly packed together. They share walls and sit close to the uneven earth. Narrow, winding alleyways cut through the dense blocks. These cobbled streets are barely wide enough for a loaded donkey to pass. The flat roofs step up and down along the natural hillside. There are no massive columns or sweeping staircases here. It is a practical, busy space built for daily survival. The stones are rough and unpolished. You can feel the tight, close-knit nature of the neighborhood. The winding paths offer shade and block the harsh winds. It is a quiet maze of ordinary life. The small doorways invite you into a much simpler past. Even near the grandest centers, heavy industry was always churning. Behind the main complex sits a large, heavily built structure. It is known today as the unexplored mansion. The rough stone walls show that it was never fully finished. Excavations revealed it was being used as a busy bronze foundry. The dirt floor is still scattered with the tools of the trade. A heavy bronze anvil sits abandoned in the shadows. Broken clay molds and piles of green, oxidized scrap metal lie nearby. The workers were busy casting tools and weapons right before the city fell. The space feels frozen in the middle of a loud, hot workday. The thick walls would have trapped the heat of the furnaces. It is a raw, industrial contrast to the painted rooms nearby. The green metal rests quietly in the dust. The fires went out a very long time ago. When the work of life was done, the architecture shifted to memory. In their early periods, builders utilized simple schist graves. These were basic, box-like pits, lined with flat stone slabs. Over centuries, these evolved into massive circular tholos tombs. These grand structures were built entirely above ground. They feature a domed, corbelled roof, made of heavy, overlapping stones. A small, dark rectangular doorway is framed by massive stone lintels. These tombs were designed to be reopened over and over again. Generations of the same family were laid to rest inside the cool, dark dome. The tomb sits quietly in a grassy field, blending into the landscape. The heavy stones offer a deep, permanent kind of peace. The circular shape feels endless and protective. The small doorway invites the living to remember the dead. The stone dome stands strong against the quiet, passing years. Down by the water, the day begins before the sun even breaks the horizon. The ancient harbors of Crete wake up to the gentle sound of wooden hulls bumping against stone docks. Fishermen return from the dark sea, just as the sky turns a pale, soft blue. They bring in the morning catch of sea bream, octopus and spiky urchins. You can smell the salt in the cool air. Soon, small charcoal fires are lit in the narrow streets of the coastal towns. The fresh catch is grilled right there in the open air. The scent of wood smoke mixes with the ocean breeze. This daily return from the sea sets the rhythm for the whole island. The people here live closely tied to the water. They know its moods and its seasons. The sea provides their food, their trade, and their quiet morning routines. It is a simple, steady way to start the day. back in the stone courtyards of the houses, another slow rhythm takes over. The daily grind of flour is a quiet, physical task that takes hours. Women kneel on the cool earth beside a heavy, curved base stone. This is the saddle quone. They place tough emmer wheat on the curve. Then, they take a smaller, smooth rubbing stone and push it back and forth. The motion is steady and rhythmic. It sounds like a deep, scraping whisper against the stone. Fine yellow dust slowly gathers at the edges. This coarse flour will become the daily bread for the family. It is hard work, but there is a peaceful focus to it. The repetitive motion grounds the morning in a shared routine. You can almost feel the weight of the stone in your own hands. The simple act of making food connects the people to the earth beneath their feet. Inside the sunlit rooms, a different kind of music fills the air. The rhythmic clack of the wooden loom is a constant background noise in these homes. Women stand before tall, upright frames to weave brightly colored wool. The vertical threads are pulled tight by dozens of heavy clay discs hanging just above the floor. As the weavers work, these weights sway and tap against each other. They create a soft, dull chime that echoes through the halls. The garments they make are rich with intricate, geometric patterns. Bright reds and deep blues slowly emerge row by row. The work requires immense patience and a steady hand. The sound of the loom becomes the heartbeat of the house. It is a comforting noise that means all is well. The slow creation of cloth marks the passing of the hours. It is a quiet art that wraps the family in warmth. Deep inside the home, small shrines offer a quiet space for protection. The household is watched over by a figure known as the snake goddess. Priestesses or family matriarchs stand before low stone altars in the dim light. They hold live snakes during their gentle rituals. These creatures are not feared here. Instead, they are respected as symbols of the deep, hidden roots of the earth. They also serve a very practical purpose. Snakes keep the dark storerooms free from mice and protect the grain. The faience statues of the goddess show her in a flounced skirt, holding the serpents with calm authority. Small clay bowls are filled with offerings of milk or honey. The flickering oil lamps cast long shadows on the painted walls. It is a private, grounded moment of faith. The ritual ties the safety of the family to the wild nature just outside their doors. In the dusty workshops of Phaistos, artisans spend their days shaping the earth. Potters sit at wooden wheels spinning clay into delicate forms. They create a famous style known as conquerors ware. The walls of these cups and bowls are thrown as thin as eggshells. It takes a very light touch to keep the wet clay from collapsing. Once the shape is set, the real magic begins. The artists paint vibrant red, white, and orange patterns onto a dark, smooth background. The swirling lines look like moving water or blooming flowers. These fragile pieces are fired in hot kilns until they ring like glass. They are luxury goods, prized by kings and merchants all the way to Egypt. Yet they begin here, in a quiet room with dirty hands. The potter simply watches the wheel spin. They find beauty in the steady, circular motion of their daily craft. Other potters look to the ocean for their daily inspiration. They create a beautiful design known as the marine style. These artists paint sea life with a deep, observational love. They watch how creatures move in the water, and bring that life to the clay. A favorite subject is the octopus. The painter carefully wraps the dark brown tentacles around the spherical curves of a pale jug. The arms stretch and curl perfectly across the round surface. It makes the vessel itself look like a living, breathing creature resting on the shelf. You can see the suction cups and the large, watchful eyes drawn with tiny brushes. The artists do not just copy nature. They adapt it to fit the shape of their work. This style brings the wild energy of the sea into the quiet corners of the home. It is a tribute to the water that surrounds them. Near a bright window, another artisan does work that strains the eyes. Seal carving is a meticulous daily craft that requires total stillness. The worker uses a tiny bow drill to engrave scenes onto semi-precious stones. These stones are often no larger than a thumbnail. Yet, they hold incredibly detailed pictures of ships, animals, and local gods. The carver holds their breath as the sharp bronze tool bites into the hard gem. One slip could ruin days of careful effort. These tiny stones are used as personal signatures. People press them into wet clay to seal jars or mark important doors. The colorful gems are worn on wrists or necks like jewelry. The workspace is covered in bright stone dust and small metal tools. It is a quiet, solitary job. The carver creates a whole miniature world that you can only see if you look very closely. Down the hall, the administrative rhythm of the palace is relentless. Scribes sit in cool rooms, keeping track of the island's vast wealth. They hold rectangular slabs of damp, grey clay in their hands. With a sharp bronze stylus, they press small linear symbols into the soft surface. They constantly tally flocks of sheep, jars of fragrant oil, and even broken chariot wheels. The work is endless and highly organized. These clay tablets are not meant to be kept forever. They are temporary records, meant to be recycled once the year is done. The scribes smooth the clay over and start again. It is a quiet, bureaucratic hum that keeps the grand palaces running. You can hear the soft scrape of the stylus and the shifting of the heavy tablets. This careful counting ensures that everyone is fed and trade flows smoothly. It is the hidden math behind the beauty. Out on the rocky coast, a much harsher routine takes place. The production of purple dye is a grueling, foul-smelling job. Workers gather thousands of murex sea snails from the shallow waters. They crush the white shells in large clay vats that sit under the hot sun. The crushed snails are left to rot, creating a terrible stench that drifts down the beach. But this decay is necessary. It extracts just a few drops of a precious, color-fast purple liquid. This dye is highly valued, and used only for the finest elite clothing. The workers' hands are permanently stained dark purple from the daily labor. It is a sharp contrast to the clean, elegant garments that will eventually wear the color. The sea breeze tries to clear the heavy air around the vats. This messy, smelly work is the hidden cost of the island's most famous luxury. Further inland, the air is filled with a much sweeter scent. Perfume making is a major industrial rhythm here. In open courtyards, workers stand over large clay vats, set above low, smoky fires. They boil crushed coriander, fresh rose petals, and wild sage in rich olive oil. The heat slowly pulls the essential oils from the plants. The fragrant steam rises and mixes with the smell of wood smoke. They are capturing the very sense of the island's spring. Once the mixture is perfect, it is carefully poured into tiny, painted ceramic jars. These jars have special stirrup-shaped handles to keep them safe during travel. The perfume is sealed tight and shipped across the sea to distant lands. The workshop is a busy but pleasant place. The workers move smoothly between the bubbling vats and the cooling jars. They bottle the memory of a blooming garden. In the quiet fields, another sweet harvest takes place. Beekeeping is a highly respected craft that provides the primary sweetener for the people. The daily labor of the insects is watched with deep reverence. This respect is captured perfectly in a famous gold pendant found at Malaya. The intricate jewelry shows two highly detailed bees facing each other. They hold a small golden disc of honeycomb between their legs. The metal glows warmly in the sun, just like the honey it celebrates. Beekeepers move slowly and calmly around the buzzing hives. They use smoke to soothe the swarms, before collecting the sticky, golden combs. The honey is used in cakes, sweet wines, and sacred offerings. It is a slow, natural process that cannot be rushed. The tiny glowing pendant reminds everyone of the small wonders of nature. It honors the quiet, steady work that makes life sweeter. High up on the steep mountain slopes, a different kind of gathering happens. foragers establish a quiet, seasonal rhythm as they search for wild herbs. They carefully climb the rocky crevices of the deep gorges. They are looking for dittany, a fuzzy pink-flowered plant that only grows here. The leaves are highly aromatic and soft to the touch. The foragers pick the herbs gently and place them into woven baskets. The air up here is thin, crisp, and smells of dry earth and pine. Once gathered, the dittany is laid out to dry under the warm sun. Later, it will be steeped into soothing teas and herbal remedies. It is known to calm the stomach and heal small wounds. This solitary work connects the people to the wild, untouched parts of their home. The mountains provide medicine for those willing to make the long, quiet climb. This deep appreciation for the gentle rhythms of nature is painted on the walls. At the coastal Villa of the Lilies in Amnisos, artists immortalized the local flora. They painted vibrant frescoes of tall, white Madonna lilies, swaying in a stylized garden. The green stems bend gracefully against a deep, rich, red background. The room feels like a permanent, quiet spring day. The artists captured the exact way the flowers nod in the coastal breeze. It is a peaceful space, designed for rest and reflection. The soft natural light from the windows makes the painted petals seem to glow. There are no people in this scene, only the quiet beauty of the plants. It shows a culture that finds deep comfort in the natural world. They wanted to bring the calm energy of a blooming garden indoors. The lilies stand as a quiet reminder of the changing seasons. When spring truly arrives, the locals leave their homes for the high ground. They make long pilgrimages to shrines built on the very highest mountain summits. These are known as peak sanctuaries. The climb is steep, and the wind howls across the exposed rocks at dusk. The pilgrims carry small, crude clay figurines in their hands. Some are shaped like human arms or legs, while others look like cattle. At the top, a large sacred bonfire burns brightly against the twilight sky. The people throw their clay shapes into the flames. These are silent prayers for healing a broken limb, or asking for a good harvest. The firelight dances on their tired faces. It is a powerful, communal moment, shared between the earth and the sky. They leave their worries in the ashes of the fire. Then, they begin the long, dark walk back down to the valleys. As the year turns to autumn, a new rhythm takes over the island. The cooler months are defined by the olive harvest. Families gather in the silver-green groves to bring in the crop. They use long wooden sticks to gently beat the branches of the trees. The dark purple fruit falls like rain onto cloths spread over the dry ground. Everyone helps to gather the olives into heavy woven baskets. Back in the rustic stone courtyards, the real work begins. The olives are poured into massive circular stone basins. Heavy wooden beams are used to crush the fruit and press out the rich oil. The air fills with the sharp, peppery scent of fresh olive oil. It is a smell that means winter will be safe and warm. The oil is stored in tall clay vats to settle. This golden liquid is the true wealth of the land. The end of this hard agricultural labor is a time for pure joy. The feeling is perfectly captured on a carved black stone vase, known as the harvest rhyton. The detailed relief shows a raucous procession of farmers marching together. They carry long wooden pitchforks over their shoulders, and smile broadly. You can almost hear them singing loudly as they walk. They are led by a man shaking a sistrum, a type of musical rattle that keeps the beat. The men step in time with the music, their bodies overlapping in the crowded scene. It is a moment of deep relief and celebration. The crops are in, the work is done, and the community is together. The artist carved their ribs and muscles to show the physical toll of the harvest. But their faces show only happiness. It is a loud, happy parade, frozen forever in dark stone. When the community gathers for major events, the social order is clear. Unlike many ancient cultures, the women here occupy prominent, public roles. This is visible in the famous grandstand fresco found at Knossos. The painted fragment shows a massive crowd of people attending a festival. In the center foreground, a group of women sits in the best seats. They wear elaborate, colorful dresses and heavy gold jewelry. Their hairstyles are intricate, and they wear bright red lipstick. They are not just watching the events, they are presiding over them. They chat with each other, and lead the religious processions. The artists painted the male crowd as a sea of simple, dark red faces behind them. The women are the clear focus of the scene. It is a society where female authority is respected and celebrated. They sit comfortably in the warm sun, watching the rituals unfold below. Down in the wide sunlit central courts, the most dangerous ritual begins. These massive stone arenas are the stage for the famous bull-leaping ceremonies. The crowd falls silent as a massive, charging black bull enters the space. Young, athletic figures in simple loincloths wait calmly in the dust. They do not use weapons, and they do not harm the animal. Instead, a leaper waits for the perfect moment to grab the bull by its horns. They use the animal's powerful upward toss to vault gracefully into the air. They flip upside down over the broad back of the beast. Finally, they land safely on their feet behind it. It requires perfect timing, immense trust, and total fearlessness. The ritual honors the raw power of nature by dancing with it, rather than killing it. The dust settles, and the crowd exhales. It is a breathtaking display of human grace. Other athletic rhythms are just as intense, though a bit more grounded. These sports are intricately captured on the boxer-riton, a tall stone vessel found at Agia Triada. The carved horizontal bands show detailed scenes of young men competing in the courtyards. They engage in fierce boxing and wrestling matches. Some of the athletes wear elaborate, plumed helmets that make them look taller and more imposing. You can see the strain in their carved muscles as they grapple and strike. The matches are highly structured, with clear rules and referees watching closely. It is a way for the youth to prove their strength and skill to the community. The stone vessel itself was likely used to pour wine during the celebrations that followed. The games are a physical prayer, offering human endurance to the gods. The courtyard echoes with the sound of bare feet on hard-packed earth. Watching over all these events is the supreme religious symbol of the island. The double axe, known as the labris, is everywhere in the sacred spaces. During major ceremonies, massive bronze axes are mounted on tall wooden poles. They are carried slowly through the courtyards by the priests. The polished metal gleams brightly in the afternoon sun. Later they are set into special stepstone bases to mark a space as divine. The shape of the axe looks like a butterfly, or the phases of the moon. It is not a weapon of war, but a tool of spiritual power. When you stand between two of these towering bronze symbols, the space feels heavy and important. They anchor the rituals, and give the open courtyards a sense of awe. The double axe is a quiet reminder of the gods' presence. It stands tall, watching over the people below. No ritual or festival is complete without the steady rhythm of music. Musicians play a vital role in every major gathering. They fill the stone courtyards with a complex reedy harmony during sacrifices and feasts. One musician plucks the strings of a 7-stringed lyre. The instrument is beautifully crafted from a hollow tortoise shell and curved animal horns. Another plays the double flute, blowing a continuous haunting melody into the air. The sound bounces off the painted walls and echoes down the long corridors. The music guides the steps of the dancers and sets the pace for the priests. It is a hypnotic sound that helps the crowd focus on the sacred moment. The notes are simple, but deeply emotional. The musicians stand quietly in their long robes, their fingers moving with practiced ease. The music weaves the whole community together into a single, shared experience. When the ceremonies end, the feasts begin, and the wine flows freely. During these communal meals, drinking is a shared, rhythmic activity. The guests use a special conical vessel called a rhiton. This beautifully carved stone cup has a small hole at the very bottom. To drink, a person must cover the hole tightly with their thumb. The vessel is filled with dark sweet wine, and passed around the dim room. You cannot set the Rhyton down on the table, or the wine will spill. The drinker must finish their share before passing it to the next person. It forces everyone to participate and keeps the cup moving. The flickering oil lamps cast warm light on the faces of the guests. Laughter and stories fill the stone hall as the wine goes round. It is a clever, playful way to ensure that everyone shares in the celebration. Far away from the noisy feasts, some rituals require total silence and darkness. Deep limestone caves like Sycro are sites of intense mystery and worship. Pilgrims leave the bright sun and descend into the damp, echoing darkness. The air grows cold, and the smell of wet earth fills their lungs. The flickering light of a single torch reveals massive, dripping stalactites hanging from the ceiling. The pilgrims come here to leave gifts for the gods of the underworld. They carefully wedge small bronze daggers and gold offerings into the tight rock crevices. They leave tiny clay cups on the wet stone ledges. The silence in the cave is heavy and absolute, broken only by the sound of dripping water. It is a place that feels completely removed from the world above. The darkness offers a private space for their deepest fears and most desperate prayers. Eventually, the rhythm of life comes to its solemn, inevitable end. The Agia Triada sarcophagus captures the quiet dignity of a local funeral. This painted limestone box shows a highly detailed, colorful scene of the final rites. Women in long robes stand between two tall double axes. They gently pour liquid libations from painted jugs into a large stone urn. Nearby, a bound bull is sacrificed to ensure the deceased has a safe passage to the next world. The colors are bright, but the mood is calm and respectful. The figures move with a slow, deliberate grace. There is no panic in this image of death, only a careful following of tradition. The rituals provide comfort to the living and honor to the dead. The music plays softly, and the offerings are made. It is a peaceful farewell, painted carefully to last for eternity. As night falls over the island, the grand palaces grow quiet and dark. The long corridors are illuminated by beautifully carved stone lamps. These heavy purple stone pedestals are filled with rich olive oil. They feature multiple notches around the rim to hold floating wicks. When lit, the three small flames cast a warm, flickering light across the rooms. The shadows dance on the walls, making the painted frescoes seem to move and breathe in the dark. The smell of burning oil is a comforting, familiar scent at the end of the day. The light is soft, just enough to guide a late-night walk down the hall. Outside, the sea crashes against the docks, and the wind blows through the olive trees. Inside, the small flames burn steadily in the quiet dark. The island rests, waiting for the sun to rise and start the rhythm again. The story of ancient Crete often begins with a quiet mystery. In a dusty museum case sits the Phaistos disc. It is a circle of fired clay. It was made around 3,700 years ago. But it was not carved by hand. The maker used tiny preformed stamps to press each symbol into the soft mud. You can see a running man. You can see a head with a plumed crown. This is the world's first known use of movable type. Someone had the idea to stamp text long before modern printing presses existed. The concept was born here, and then vanished for 3 millennia. The symbols spiral inward toward the center. They look neat and deliberate. We can see the care it took to press each one. Yet we still do not know what the message says. The clay holds its secret perfectly still. That silence extends to the rest of their written world. The Minoan people used a script we call Linear A. You can find it scratched into broken clay tablets. It looks like neat rows of lines and curves. Linguists have studied these marks for a very long time. They noticed that many symbols match a later Greek script. Because of this match, scholars can actually read the words out loud. They know what sounds the letters make. You could stand in a room and speak the ancient words into the air, but the language itself is completely lost. We have absolutely no idea what any of it means. It is a strange kind of ghost. We have the voice, but we lack the translation. The words might be lists of grain. They might be prayers to the sea. We can only listen to the sounds and wonder. If we cannot read their words, we can at least look at their homes. At the Great Palace of Knossos, archaeologists found the town mosaic. It is a collection of tiny glazed plaques. They are made of a material called faience. When you look closely, the houses seem shockingly modern. They do not look like ancient huts. They show tall, multi-story buildings. You can see flat roofs and symmetrical square windows. You can even spot red timber framing on the walls. These tiny tiles prove that their streetscapes looked much like a 19th century European town. People lived in complex, stacked apartments. You can imagine neighbors leaning out of those square windows. You can picture the narrow streets running between the tall walls. The plaques are small enough to hold in your hand. Yet they build an entire lost city right in front of your eyes. We get another tiny glimpse of their world from a single piece of clay. It was found in a coastal town and is known as the master impression. It is a small ceiling, once used to close a document or a jar. But the picture pressed into it is vast. It shows a towering, terraced palace complex, right by the sea. A commanding figure stands on the very top roof. The carving is microscopic, but the details are perfectly clear. You can see the rocky shore. You can see the multiple levels of the grand buildings. It gives us a rare look at how these coastal settlements actually stood against the sky. The artist managed to fit a massive architectural wonder onto a lump of clay no bigger than a coin. It is a sweeping landscape, shrunk down to the size of a thumbprint. Sometimes, that love for small scale took a much heavier form. On the remote southern coast, a wealthy person built a sprawling home. We call it the Makrigialos Villa. It sits quietly near the water. The strange thing about this building is its layout. It is an exact, miniature-scale model of a grand palace. It has all the right rooms in all the right places. There is a tiny central courtyard. There are tiny storage magazines for holding jars of oil. It is built just like the massive royal centers, but shrunk down. It feels like a life-size dollhouse made of stone. You can walk through the small halls and step over the low thresholds. We do not know why someone wanted a pocket-sized palace. Perhaps it was a sign of status. Or perhaps they just liked the comfort of a grand design made small. Inside those homes and palaces, the nights were surprisingly gentle. On the mainland of Greece, ancient kings built massive permanent fire hearths. They needed roaring fires to keep the cold away. But here on the island the climate was much milder. The Minoan palaces had no fixed fireplaces at all. Instead they used small, portable clay braziers. When the winter air grew crisp, a servant would carry one of these painted heaters into the room. They would fill it with glowing red charcoal. The embers would cast a warm, low light across the painted walls. It was just enough heat to take the chill off the evening. When the room was warm, they could simply pick up the brazier by its handle and move it away. The heat was quiet and mobile. It moved through the dark halls exactly where it was needed. Even the most basic chores in those halls were touched by art. Merchants had to weigh their trade goods on large bronze balance scales. They needed heavy standard weights to measure out grain or metal. Instead of using plain rocks, they carved beautiful blocks of purple porphyry stone. These heavy talent weights were treated as blank canvases. Artisans carefully carved, raised reliefs of curling octopuses onto the stone. The tentacles wrapped smoothly around the heavy blocks. A merchant would place this beautiful sea creature onto the scale every single day. It was a purely practical object, meant for the dusty work of commerce. Yet someone took the time to make it lovely. It shows a deep need to bring the beauty of the natural world indoors. Even a heavy block of stone used for counting wealth had to honor the life of the sea. When the day's trading was done, the palace offered quiet games. The Minoans played a complex board game called Zatrikion. A surviving board was found resting in the ruins. It is a true masterpiece of luxury. The rectangular surface is inlaid with white ivory and clear rock crystal. It sparkles with glass paste and shimmering gold leaf. You can see intricate circular and cross-shaped patterns across the top. It must have looked stunning in the dim evening light. Two players would sit across from each other, moving pieces across the gold and crystal. But the rules of the game are completely lost to time. We can admire the board, but we cannot play. We do not know how a person won or lost. The beautiful board sits in silence. It is a game waiting for players who will never return to take their turn. You might wonder who was winning the real games of power. They built massive palaces and controlled a vast fleet of ships. Yet their art contains a glaring omission. There is not a single clear picture of a king in their entire civilization. We have no undisputed image of a ruler. We have no names of historical leaders carved into stone. Instead, the frescoes show large, egalitarian crowds. Men and women are drawn in profile, all at the exact same scale. No single figure is elevated above the rest. No one is enlarged to show royal status. They painted nature, rituals, and groups of people moving together. It is incredibly rare for a Bronze Age empire to hide its rulers. We do not know if they shared power, or just chose not to boast. The people on the walls simply stand together, equal in the paint. When we do look closely at the people in the paint, they feel surprisingly familiar. One of the most famous fresco fragments is nicknamed La Parisienne. It was discovered in the dirt in 1903. The fragment shows the profile of a woman. She has a large, stylized eye, and a complex knot of clothing at the back of her neck. But what caught everyone's attention was her makeup. She wears bright red painted lipstick. Her style looked exactly like a contemporary Parisian socialite from the turn of the century. The ancient artist captured a look of bold, modern elegance. She does not look like a dusty relic from the distant past. She looks like someone you might pass on a busy city street today. The bright colors on the white plaster have survived for thousands of years. Her sharp, confident profile still catches the eye. Not every famous face on those walls is exactly what it seems. The Prince of the Lilies is often used as the poster child for this ancient culture. You will see his image on book covers and museum banners. He walks gracefully through a field of flowers. But the figure is actually a modern Frankenstein. Restorers pieced him together from 3 entirely different fragments. They found a torso, a head with a crown, and a leg. These pieces likely belonged to 3 completely different people. They might have even come from different scenes. The restorers filled in the blank spaces with modern paints to connect them. The beautiful prince we see today never actually existed in the ancient world. He is a well-meaning illusion. We are looking at a puzzle put together wrong, creating a brand new person out of broken plaster and modern hope. The artists were just as creative when they painted the animal world. Many vibrant frescoes feature bright blue monkeys gathering flowers. They climb through landscapes of red and white crocus blooms. The strange thing is that monkeys are not native to this island. There were no wild monkeys living in the local forests. The artists were likely painting vervet monkeys imported from Egypt. Wealthy families probably kept them as exotic pets. The painters watched these strange, lively animals playing in the courtyards. Then they painted them in a highly stylized, brilliant blue. The color makes them look magical against the plaster walls. It shows how connected this island was to the wider world. Ships brought strange creatures across the sea. The artists took those foreign pets and turned them into bright blue myths, forever picking flowers in the painted gardens. Another imported pet shows up in a surprisingly realistic hunting scene. A fresco found at a nearby villa shows a stealthy cat. The spotted feline is creeping through dense green foliage. It is intensely focused on a brightly colored pheasant standing nearby. Just like the monkeys, cats were not native to the island. The artist was either painting a rare Egyptian pet brought over on a ship, or they were copying an Egyptian artistic motif. Either way, they did it with incredible skill. The tension in the cat's body is perfect. You can almost feel the quiet moment right before the pounce. The leaves seem to rustle in the background. It is a very natural, quiet drama. The artist captured the pure instinct of the animal. They froze that split second of focus on the wall, leaving the bird forever unaware of the danger. Sometimes the artists ignored the exotic and focused on the quirky local wildlife. A painted frieze from a rest house shows a very specific observation of nature. It is known as the partridge and hoopoe fresco. Plump partridges walk along the rocky ground. But if you look closely, a distinct hoopoe bird is hiding in the bushes. It has a funny crested head, and seems to be peeking out at the others. This is not a grand myth, or a scene of divine power. It is just a fleeting, mundane moment of wildlife. The artist must have sat outside and watched the birds interact. They noticed the shy hoopoe hiding in the leaves. They decided that this small, quiet moment was worth painting. It is a gentle reminder that these ancient people, watch the world with the same quiet amusement that we do today. That same intense observation went into their smallest stone carvings. The chieftain cup is a black steatite vessel only a few inches tall. But the carving on its surface is a marvel of microscopic precision. It shows a young man holding a staff, standing before another figure. If you look very closely, you can see the individual textures of their clothes. You can see the fine details of their woven belts. You can even see the distinct leather folds of their tall boots. The artist carved these tiny textures into hard stone with absolute confidence. You have to lean in close to appreciate the work. It was meant to be held in the hand and studied. The cup feels heavy and smooth. The tiny leather boots and woven belts remind us how much care they put into the things they touched every day. They achieved that same impossible detail, using imported ivory. The Palakastro Kouros is a small statuette of a standing youth. It was carved from the tooth of a hippopotamus. The artist adorned the pale ivory with delicate accents of gold leaf. But the true marvel is the anatomical detail. The carving features perfectly rendered veins running under the skin. You can see the exact tension of the muscles in the legs and arms. This shows an understanding of human anatomy that was centuries ahead of its time. The artist knew exactly how the body worked beneath the surface. They translated that knowledge into a piece of ivory no bigger than your forearm. The small figure seems ready to take a breath. It stands on the table, glowing softly with gold, a quiet masterpiece of science and art blended perfectly together. Sometimes these tiny masterpieces get lost in the modern world. The ring of Minos is a heavy, solid gold signet ring. A young boy found it by accident in 1928. It features an incredibly detailed microscopic engraving of a goddess, a boat, and a shrine. But when experts looked at it, they dismissed it as a clever forgery. They thought it was too perfect to be real. The ring was lost for decades, hidden away and forgotten. It finally resurfaced in 2001. This time, advanced testing proved it was a genuine, priceless artifact. The gold had been waiting patiently to be understood. The tiny boat and the goddess had survived the fall of an empire, only to be rejected by modern eyes. Now it rests safely under museum glass, gleaming in the soft light, its true history finally restored. The shrines depicted on those tiny rings were often topped with a very specific shape. The sacred horns of consecration were a symbol of their religion. They looked like the stylized horns of a bull. But the culture had an absolute obsession with their scale. You can find these horns carved from giant limestone blocks weighing many tons. Those massive stones sat on the roofs of the grand palaces against the sky. but you can also find them shrunk down to microscopic dots. Artisans carved tiny versions onto personal sealstones worn on fingers. The shape was everywhere, from the size of a car down to the size of a grain of rice. It did not matter how big the horns were. The meaning remained exactly the same. They marked a space as sacred, whether it was a towering building or a quiet piece of jewelry. They also brought the sacred shapes of the sea onto their altars. Artisans possessed a total mastery over hard stone. They used dark chlorite and black obsidian to create exact, life-sized replicas of Triton seashells. These heavy, perfectly proportioned stone shells look incredibly real, but they are solid rock. The makers carefully hollowed out the insides. They used them as ritual pouring vessels during ceremonies. They wanted to mimic the treasures of the sea, but make them permanent. A real shell might break or fade. A stone shell would last forever. You can imagine the weight of the dark stone in a priest's hands. Liquid would pour smoothly from the carved lip. It was a way to bring the ocean into a dimly lit room. The stone shells sit on the altars perfectly silent, holding the memory of the tide. Other ritual objects were much stranger and rougher. Household shrines often featured bizarre clay vessels that archaeologists call snake tubes. They are tall, cylindrical pots made of coarse clay. They have no bottom at all. The sides are covered in handles, sculpted to look like writhing, undulating snakes. Their exact use remains a bit of a mystery. Because they are open at the bottom, they were likely used to pour liquid offerings directly into the earth. You would set the tube on the dirt floor and pour wine or oil inside. The liquid would sink straight down into the soil. The clay snakes seem to guard the offering as it disappears. It is a very grounded, earthy kind of magic. The tall tubes stand in the shadows of the house, acting as a direct, open pipe to the world below the floorboards. The creatures guarding their rituals could be even more bizarre. A recurring figure in their art is known today as the Minoan genius. It is a mythical creature adapted from an Egyptian hippopotamus goddess. But the islanders changed it into something entirely their own. They carved it onto tiny agate seal stones. It is a strange, upright beast, with a lion's head and a crocodile's back. Despite its fierce look, it is usually doing something very gentle. The creature is often shown peacefully carrying a tall water pitcher. It walks upright, to pour water over sacred branches. It is a monster, assigned to do quiet garden chores. The tiny carvings show the beast glowing softly in the warm light. It is a beautiful example of how they borrowed ideas from across the sea and turned them into their own quiet, helpful myths. Sometimes those quiet rituals ended in sudden tragedy. High on a mountain sits a small stone shrine called Anima Spilia. 3,700 years ago, a ritual was taking place inside. Suddenly, a massive earthquake struck the island. The roof beams and heavy stones collapsed instantly. The building was crushed so fast that it perfectly preserved the moment. It froze 3 figures in place, around a low stone altar. The dust settled, and the shrine remained untouched for 3 millennia. It is a tragic archaeological snapshot of a world ending in a split second. The scattered pottery and the fallen stones tell a story of sudden silence. The mountain simply shook, and the light went out. The site feels very still now. The wind blows through the rubble, passing over the dark stones that kept the secret hidden for so long. They also carved their religious symbols directly into the earth for the dead. Near the main palace, there is a site called the Tomb of the Double Axes. It takes the island's religious obsession to a literal extreme. The double-headed axe was their most sacred symbol. Here, the entire subterranean burial chamber was carved out of the solid bedrock. The builders shaped the walls and the floor plan to form the exact outline of a massive axe. You have to walk down into the dark rock to see it. The shape is perfectly symmetrical. They wanted the deceased to rest inside the symbol itself. The rock wraps around the space, holding the shape forever. Natural light filters down from the entrance, illuminating the sharp corners of the room. It is a quiet, heavy place, carved by hand out of the deep stone. The living preferred to place their altars high up in the open air. The peak sanctuary of Mount Juctas features a massive step-stone altar. It was built on the very edge of a sheer rocky cliff. The location was chosen with incredible precision. It looks down over a vast, dark valley. Miles away in that valley sits the central court of the great palace. The altar was positioned so perfectly that the fire from its sacrifices would be visible directly from the palace below. When night fell, a dying fire on the cliff would look like a bright star resting on the mountain. The people in the valley could look up and see the glowing embers. It connected the high peak to the low valley with a single line of light. The mountain and the city spoke to each other through the fire. Long after the fires went out and the palaces fell, the myths began to grow. The most famous story of this island is the square maze of the labyrinth. But that famous geometric pattern did not actually exist in Minoan times. It first appeared nearly 1,000 years later. The later Greek city minted silver coins, stamped with the clear, square maze. They were capitalizing on the old myths to attract ancient tourism. The original builders never drew that maze. The later people invented it to explain the massive, confusing ruins left behind. You can look at the tarnished silver coin resting on a stone today. The sharp lines of the maze catch the light. It is a beautiful design, but it is a memory of a memory. The real maze was just the slow, quiet passage of time, over the broken stones. Our walk through ancient Crete is coming to an end. Wherever you've drifted to, you don't need to come back. There's nothing more to listen for tonight. Sleep well.